Indiana Basketball Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I am your co-host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my other co-host, number one, Steve Risley's Dogs. Can you say hi, guys?
You can hear them.
All right, and of course, 1981 national champion and 1979 NIT champion, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
And a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. But that's not relevant right now, apparently. I'm doing wonderful and fine today.
I didn't know that I had to give the entire resume and biography. That would take forever with a man as accomplished as you, Steve.
You said it, I didn't.
I know. I was just kissing your ass so we can move on to our next co-host.
Move on.
Also, what a Big Ten championship. Help me welcome to the show number 30, not number 34, because number 30 was more significant to him, I guess. Collin Hartman. How you doing, Collin?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right. And we would like to get the show to where people can ask us questions, ask Steve, Collin questions. And we do have a Facebook page now called Indiana Basketball Weekly with Collin Hartman and Steve Risley. So if you guys have any questions you want to ask in the show, you can send us a message there. Or, Steve will ask for questions. But anything you ask, the guys will answer. No question is stupid. Correct, Steve?
No, there's intelligent questions. I've heard a couple of intelligent questions in my 45 years.
There are no such things as dumb questions.
There is. The one you don't ask.
Well,
that's a pretty dumb question. Excuse me, if I take 10 more steps forward, am I going to fall off this cliff? You don't ask that question. That's a pretty dumb question.
I don't know.
Yeah, you probably are.
I thought when you said you were going to take 10 steps forward, it would be to put the dogs outside so they quit barking during the show. Collin, I know that we can't wait for interaction from the fans. I know you want to hear and answer the questions.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, at the end of the day, with Steve and I's background, obviously being past players and having two different eras, him playing for Knight, me playing for two different coaches, it's just we have a lot of insight, and I'd love to hear questions about the past, about the current team, whatever lifestyle, off the court, on the court, whatever you name it, behind the scenes stuff. I think it can be really fun to be able to give people the insight of what it's like to be an Indiana basketball player day in and day out. And in two completely different eras.
Yeah, and it's like somebody said on Facebook this week, they loved the show because it was like listening to a grandfather talk to his son.
Shout out to old grumpy guy.
Yeah, they were right. Let's start off.
Get off my lawn.
I relish that.
I can hear Steve saying, "Get off my lawn," too.
If you ever watched My Three Sons, Uncle Charlie was the one that ruled the roost in the family with Steve and Chip and Ernie and Rob. They always went to Uncle Charlie. They always went to Mr. French in the family affair.
Have you ever seen My Three Sons, Collin?
Negative.
I didn't think so.
Oh, yes.
Put it like this: My Three Sons was so old that I think they stopped showing reruns when I was a kid of it. That's how old Steve is.
It was back when they had 4 channels.
Yeah, they did. Life was rough back then, too. So let's
I
talk.
remember that. You had rabbit ears, baby. You didn't have any cable hookups. You had rabbit ears.
No,
well, half the reason people had kids back then was so the kids would go up and change the channel. They didn't have remotes.
Yeah,
I thought
exactly.
the reason people had kids back then was because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah, that too. And there needed to be farm work done.
Yeah. And I do remember my dad making me sit by the TV to switch the channels. Luckily, there wasn't.
That's a real thing.
Now. Yeah. But let's talk this weekend. Indiana basketball kicks off with Hoosier Hysteria on Saturday. Let's look at it like this. What do you think the significance of Hoosier Hysteria is for the players? From a player perspective, and we'll start with Collin.
I mean, for a lot of guys, it depends on what guy you're asking. Easy,
well, what's the
bitter old man.
For you?
Easy now. Well, for me, it was different every single year. That's what I'm saying. So freshman year, it was completely different than it was my 5th year. Just because it's brand new when you're coming in as a new guy. It's the first time you get to kind of showcase all of your talents and what you've been working through all summer to the fans and kind of show what you can do and show where you're going to fit and and see how the team's going to mesh. As an individual looking at stuff like that, that's where your mindset is. Honestly, as a freshman, is don't mess it up. Don't look like an idiot. Because at the end of the day, they're going to judge you one way or the other. And like I said, nobody wants to be judged in a negative sense. So it's just really just going out there and trying to contribute, but at the same time not get out of your realm and do anything that you are not capable or not supposed to do. It's not your role. So just really kind of finding your identity with your team and having the lights on and with people in the building for the first time, and just getting acclimated in that sense. When you move to a senior year or fifth year.
Colin, can I ask you a question? Are you talking about that night? That night? Okay, go ahead and finish. Or you're going to get ripped on this one.
Oh, this is better be good. So a senior year or a fifth year, obviously it's like your last go around, last Hoosier Hysteria, last everything. So it's just a whole different feel. It's your last time, last Hoosier Hysteria, so it's just a different mindset. Now, Steve, what were you about to say? Because I'm curious. I can't even get past my
yeah,
my
I
thoughts.
am too, because I think he might test a stupid question theory. Go ahead, Steve.
No, there's no stupid question. No, we didn't know what Midnight Madness was or opening night or Hoosier Hysteria. This is a made-for-television Dick Vitale special event that started on the East Coast with teams going out and wanting to practice at 12:01 on October 15th, which was the original start date of Midnight Madness. And then ESPN decided to cover it. And then ESPN decided hey, guess what? We can sell advertising, and we can make money off this, and we can get people to bring in canned foods and goods, and we can donate them and get a tax write-off on it. We can pack the stadiums, and we don't get outside of our box. Yeah, like I see nothing but dunk contests, dribble drive silliness, coming out and doing all kinds of goofy things that you don't do every day in practice. I mean, it's a wonderful night. It's a celebration of the start of college basketball, which is the media event that it's all become. And that's all fine and dandy. I mean, the Assembly Hall will be packed. The anticipation for Indiana basketball is through the roof. I think the team's going to be very good, but it is just it is not anything other than a social media event that's on Big Ten Plus. Indiana's Midnight Madness or 4 o'clock Madness, whatever they do. One year, I think they used to do it. They used to do it around Halloween night, didn't they? Where they had trick-or-treating coming in and doing something like that a couple of years. So it's a community event. It's a great event. It's all fun, but it has no purpose other than to showcase the team, get the season fired up, make money for the university, put it on television, and the Big Ten Network makes money because Indiana's is on Big Ten Plus. ESPN will host several of them, I'm sure, throughout the night on theirs. I'm sure Duke's will be on, or North Carolina's, or Kentucky's, or UCLA's, the big schools.
Kansas
or some of that, and it's a wonderful evening. And it's something that did not occur in 1977 to 1981 when we were playing. We just started practice on October 15th at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we thought it was the first day of hell is what we thought. Because that was invariably the hardest practice that we had every day because there were no holds barred. The tone was set on October 15th of how hard we were going to work and how under the radar we were going to be for the rest of the year until we started winning games and started getting recognition for our on-court prowess, not our in-practice prowess. But that being said, enjoy the ceremonies, enjoy the pomp and circumstance. It is the progression of what college basketball has come to, and it's a wonderful event.
So really,
well, it's not just college basketball at the end of the day. It's the whole society with technology coming into play and social media and people wanting to be more involved and information being more readily available and stuff of that nature. At the end of the day, I was wondering if we were going to debate on some sense if it's for the players or the fans, but at the end of the day, it's for all the above, players, fans, and media, and for everybody. Well, I forget what year it was. We had a terrible practice that day. And earlier that day we had a 3-hour practice, and we had a terrible practice. Like we were not playing well as a team. and we had a 3-hour practice.
What was this your team? This was your team?
This was, I think this was my freshman or sophomore year or something like that.
Oh, so what you're saying is Crean was trying to coach again.
Easy now. We had a terrible practice, and so we took Hoosier Hysteria very, very, very seriously in our scrimmage portion. Like they were keeping stats and keeping turnovers and stuff like that. And if you didn't perform well, if you weren't running the court, A, you got yanked out, and B, you were paying for it the next day. So it's situation by situation. Most of the time, 90% of the time, yes, 95% of the time, it's for the fans. It's for show. It's to get guys to have fun and let loose a little bit and do the contest, 3-point contest, shooting contest, whatever, dunk contest. You know, it's for show, and the game's evolved to that. And social media and society has really built that standard that you have to have stuff like that as a program to sell the program and do this and that. And it's just, it's fun. At the end of the day, it's not as much for the players, obviously. As a player, it was really fun to look forward to that and know that you're in the competitions and, that you're going to get a scrimmage a little bit at the end and, get to go out and have the introductions and stuff like that to the fans. It's fun. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's fun. It's not business. And, and what Steve was saying. What'd you say?
Do they charge the fans to get in?
I don't know. I've never paid for them.
No, they do not. They do not.
I think you wait in line.
They do not charge to get in. They do request that you bring canned goods or make some kind of a non-perishable food donation that the university donates to a local food bank or something of that nature, which is a noble cause.
Well, and
generally everybody does.
You get a lot of people that can't get tickets to Indiana basketball because maybe they can't afford it.
Sure.
And it's a way for them to get there and go in Assembly Hall.
And that's a big thing that we do that for the Hoosier Hysteria, and then we also do that for like a Halloween event too, where all the kids dress up, all the little kids.
Right. People
come in for everywhere that, like Mike said, that people can't afford tickets. It's an awesome opportunity to come in. We sign autographs after. You get to meet people. Fans get the opportunity to meet the players and stuff like that, and get autographs and get posters and all that, and just be really interactive, where you didn't used to get that opportunity as a fan, especially if you don't have the money to get tickets, because season tickets aren't easy to come by, especially.
You see, Collin, and I'm being a little bit funny and belligerent here, but that's the difference between your era and my era. My era, it wasn't whether you could afford tickets or not. In my era, you couldn't get tickets, no matter what the cost was. In your era, because they wanted to charge so much to have a seat at Assembly Hall, most people just couldn't afford the ticket. There were plenty available, but they just couldn't afford them. But in my era, you sat on the 10th row, the last seat back in the corner of the rafters. You were thrilled to death to be in Assembly Hall. So, score one for the old guys, the grandpas.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Right. You can't argue with anger. You can't argue with pure anger.
No, but
Midnight Madness. Funny there. That was just belligerent, Steve.
Bitterness.
Yeah, I know. Midnight Madness was definitely a creation of Dick Vitale. He came up with that phrase. He came up with that when he was a prime for ESPN. He came up with that, and the schools started following suit. And they got a couple schools to do the midnight 12:01 practice. And there was a couple of outlier schools. And then everybody got on board. The ESPN got on board. And it's turned into the phenomena that it is today. And, I mean, I know schools do a lot of preparation.
Yeah, what's up with the 4 o'clock? It kind of ruins it.
I'm not complaining, though, because, I mean.
Yeah. No, Collin, what you have to understand is it's at 4 o'clock for Indiana because it goes in pecking order in order of relevance as to how you are in the final situation of the tournament back in March. So trust me, Duke will be going at midnight. North Carolina will be going at midnight. Kansas will be going at midnight. Indiana will be going at 4 o'clock. So it kind of puts everything into perspective as to where they are in the top 25 rankings right now. It's like, Indiana, yeah, we'll do them, and we'll keep them on Big Ten Plus. We won't even put them on Big Ten Network. But the big schools will be happening right around midnight and later on in the evening that night. And it'll be broadcast all night on ESPN or ESPN2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It'll change eventually, sure. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
and I'm having fun with it. I think it's a great thing for college basketball because I think college basketball is the most celebrated and funnest season of sports that there is in the United States.
It's not.
You know, it is just fun. It starts off.
And actually, the first team to do Midnight Madness was in 1971, Steve. It was Maryland.
Okay, sure. Lefty Drizel, no doubt.
I don't think Lefty Drizel was there in 1971. I think he was at James
Was he?
Madison.
All right.
But, and I also, Steve.
Hit him with the facts, Mike. Hit him with the facts.
I got some more facts, Steve. Kansas is Friday, September 28th at 6:30. Indiana is the 29th at 4. When I look at this, Steve, almost all of these guys are like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Kentucky, Big Blue Madness, Friday at 7 o'clock. North Carolina, you got late night with Roy Williams, and you would think that would be late, but it's not. It's at 7:30. Let's see. Well, I think I've proven my point. We're all right.
You've proven your point. Sure. Yeah, I'm pontificating to no degree, but it's changed. I'm having fun with it. I think it's a wonderful thing.
So do I. I'm having fun with you. So fun with Steve.
I can tell you right now that if Bob Knight was coach at Indiana today, we would not be doing Midnight Madness. We would be at practice October 1 at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, practicing our butts off, going through a 3.5, 4-hour practice, and we were doing films afterwards. The practice that day, we'd be at study table, and we would be at training table, and then we'd be getting ready for class on the next day or whatever.
All right.
That's the genre of the way it's gone. As Collin said, it's the social media world.
Because I can tell you this.
It's all changed.
Starting in 2003, Texas Tech started having March Madness with Coach Bob Knight at midnight. So I just figured I'd bring that up. So,
well, consider the source, Texas Tech.
What's that mean?
That means nobody gave a damn whether it was midnight or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Or 2 o'clock in the morning, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure
Who cares?
I think Mike's getting at the point that Bob still had it.
Yeah, he still had it. He had it. He didn't not let them have it. They did it, and in that year they made the tournament. The next year they made it to the Sweet 16, where Indiana did not do anything like that when Knight was gone in 2003 and 2004. But I digress. It was just the point that I was making. That,
no,
I love when people use the word digress. I digress.
I don't even know what it means because I went to
You're so sophisticated, Mike.
I know. Sometimes I
You're
think
too smart to be on radio.
The panache that I possess is just so overwhelming that it just goes over Steve's head. All right.
It sure does.
Let's talk about this.
No doubt.
We got basketball starting. You got young guys stepping on campus, getting the recognition right away from being known as a basketball player, student athlete. As a freshman going in, Collin, and then we'll go to Steve and see the difference in the 80 years between when you guys played. How did you handle that?
Well, I think there's the clear difference is going to be between Steve's experience and my experience is just social media. I think that's just what it always goes to. Facial recognition. Not that Steve, I'm 100% positive that everybody knew who all the players were on campus anyways back in your era. But I think it comes around much quicker with social media and with the publicity and the hype and everything like that, whether we're good or not. People know just because social media is so what it is. It's a microwave society. Everybody wants to know everything now and know everybody now. And everybody gets in trouble faster. Everybody gets recognition faster for doing things good or bad, whatever. I mean, starting off, it's fun. I mean, you walk around campus, people look at you weird. They take double takes. It's like, is that him? Is that not? You know? So it's just, I mean, it's interactive. Especially when you're in a small classroom or whatever, and they're calling out names, and you have to say here or whatever. Everybody looks at you weird. It's awkward. But at the end of the day, it's fun. It's an experience for people who are on campus as students and get to be in class with athletes and vice versa. Athletes get to be around campus and be cordial and be respectful and represent the university, something bigger than themselves in a public eye for the very first time. You're not just representing your family or yourself anymore. You're representing a whole program that has history years and years and years and decades back. And it's just, you have a sense of pride when you're walking around, and being able to represent it is a big thing. But I think that social media, A, puts a target on your back, and B, gives you a whole lot more responsibility, just because that can go public within seconds. If you were to do something, dishonorable or disrespectful or something of that nature.
All right, Steve.
But overall, it's a good experience.
Hey, Steve.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I don't think.
My question is this, Steve: did people know immediately when you're on campus, first day of class, who you were, or did that come more once when you got into the season?
No, you have to remember, it was a little different because back when I was playing, there was not the influx of the Colts. The Pacers weren't that big. Professional sports didn't dominate the local newspapers. High school sports did. I mean, when I look back on the scrapbooks that my mom and dad kept, there was, on any given Saturday, there was a high school game that was the headlines of the sports section. And I'm not saying it was always mine. It was some school. It was Landon's, Tech's, or so many different ones. But it was always a high school game that dominated the Saturday and Sunday morning sports pages. So your social recognition was there because there was so much more focus on high school sports.
It was more
and where players were going. It was more important back then. Exactly. You were single class basketball. People knew who you were. They knew who the all-star team was. They knew who the studs out there were and who was going where. And it was a lot. Now, what we didn't have was the pratfalls or pitfalls that Collin faced of the instant blasting of something stupid or something taken way out of context and happening that created havoc before you could be tried and reviewed. You just were automatically convicted because it was put on social media. Had that happened in our age, we would have faced much of the same problems that Collin's era did. and we would have, because we did the same things. I mean, we snuck into bars. We did everything that you guys did. The only saving grace for us is we were smart enough that when I went to IU as a freshman, I was too busy with Rush. I was trying to join a sorority. I'm like, man, if I'm going to sleep in a cold dorm, I'm going to do it with a bunch of Alpha Chi's or a bunch of Chios and not a bunch of Sig F's or Sigma Chi's or anything like that. So I was trying to get pledged into a Rush to a sorority so I could sleep in the cold dorm with all the girls. We weren't messing around, with that. We were saying you got to be pretty quiet and hush hush about that. So we were all tied up into there. The guys that that wanted to go to have fun and be a college student for some time. I think there was more of an opportunity to be a college student in my era than there was in Collin's era. And we still got the recognition. Anytime we walked into a class, people immediately knew who you were. And you walked around campus and people knew who you were. You always got thanked to pay. Anytime you went to get a tank of gas, you prayed to God you didn't have to pay for it. That somebody would say, hey, don't worry about it. We got you covered. Anytime you went to Papagallo's or to Roderick St. John's or somewhere, you'd hope that somebody'd be nice to him. That stuff all went on throughout the period of times. It wasn't as broadcast on a wide scale as it was in Collin's era. But there's no real change there. You walk onto campus as a freshman at IU and a basketball player as what's called a BMOC. As a big man on campus. You do. And that's the nature of beach. And how you handle that and how you deal with that in the first 3 to 4 months really sets the tone for what kind of character you build in yourself and what kind of person you end up becoming and how much fun you have with it, how much you don't take yourself too seriously. The only problem, like I said, in Collin's era, in my opinion, was with the social media and the Instagram and Twitter and stuff. Man, it was out there before they even had a chance to explain themselves. I mean, they were getting called into the coach's office the next morning, and half the time these poor kids were probably tried and convicted before they even get a chance to open their mouth. Right. And that wasn't the case in 1981. We were able to squelch a lot of things, or a little more discretion was involved in what we did. But don't underestimate the fun. The same fun that we had in 77. 81 isn't the same fun that these guys had when Collin was playing. It's an honor. It's an absolute honor to be a basketball player at the university. If you ever think of anything other than that, 100%, it's just an honor because you are looked upon as a upper class society person, whether you are or not. And how you deal with that really molds a lot of your character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so we're coming up, first day of practice, and we had a locker room story with Collin last week. Steve, do you have any first day of practice stories from Coach Knight?
First day of practice was always, in our case, the rules were a little different. And I don't know, Collin, what the rules are now. Our coaches are more allowed to be involved with you guys during the summer. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. See, in my day, a coach technically couldn't be in the room or in the building until October 15th. Anything you did until that date, when the first day of practice, you had to technically be doing on your own. And we were skirting the issue a lot of times and actually I think it came down a couple of times where we would go and practice all this time during the summer, and we would practice in Assembly Hall. And we would get an email or something, hey, you got to let some hyper kids come and play with you. You got to bring some guys in because you can't just have it exclusive to BSB and basketball until October 15th. So the regimen was a little bit different then. But, invariably you'd be there on September 4th, right after Labor Day, your first day of practice. You'd be in Assembly Hall, and I'd think I was Magic Johnson, and I'd fire a pass, and I'd hear from the rafters, Risley, that's an NFW pass. Risley, you know what an NFW pass is? Where the hell is that coming from? It's a no effing way pass, Risley. I see you throw that October 15th. You'll be playing at the Hyper Building with the rest of the clowns. So you would invariably get those kinds of things.
Oh, you were being coached.
You were being coached. There was no doubt.
He was being browbeaten. I don't know about coached.
Yeah. And there would invariably be 2 days after that. There would invariably an academic meeting with Buzz Kerpius and Anitra House, and I don't know if those are names you're familiar with, Collin, if they were still around at your point in time. But they were the academic counselors, and you'd be sitting in there going over academics, and so for some reason, one of the coaches would happen to be walking by the academic office and come in and say, you really ought to really control your passing lanes and really look at your passing lanes and things like that. So it was all slighted to a little different degree, but we weren't allowed to have any contact at all. And we played a lot in the Hyper Building. They would reserve the upstairs of the Hyper Building, which there were 3 wood floors up there. They would actually put the gates up, and most of the players would go play up there most of the summer, most of the time, just to keep the NCAA at bay. But occasionally, when things got hairy or they had camps or something going on, we would go into Assembly Hall. But Knight usually made sure that there were a couple quality non-team players that were practicing with us too, so he could at least say that it was an open scrimmage for guys that wanted to go play, just an invitation only to come and practice and play. To a degree. And I'm sure he stayed within the rules. Knight never bent the rules in a way that would cause him to be suspended or in trouble with Indiana or not. But I'm sure he knew what his limits were on how he could stretch the rules. So it's a lot different because I follow Indiana now. We all do. And you guys basically practice. Archie was speaking to the fact that the freshmen have 6 weeks under their belt already of being at IU, of practicing at IU. I mean, I think I came into campus a week before college, and I got settled in. I got to have early entry into the dorms, early dorm room to myself, and got in and got settled in, so I didn't have to go through the transfer day and move-in day. And it was a different world back then. So,
all right, Collin?
But all the same objective in mind.
Collin.
Right. It's like Steve said, a completely different world. I think that's going to be a recurring theme. Like Steve said, guys have weeks and weeks under their belts. Mine wasn't technically the first practice that really got me. It was the first day. The first day I stepped on campus was like conditioning in the summer. So it was like our equivalent of first practice, whatever. It was kind of a funny story, and I'm kind of embarrassed to tell it, but whatever. I walked on, and I had done some conditioning or whatever, or what I thought to be conditioning to prepare for the summer workouts and stuff going into practice and stuff like that. So Moved in June or whatever, and then had practice the next day or whatever after I moved in, and we started doing conditioning, and I couldn't even stand. We ran a couple sprints after we lifted, and we ran a couple sprints, and I was dead. I completely gassed, like to the point where I'm embarrassed to say it. I leaned over on Will Sheehy's shoulder, and I leaned over on his shoulder, and I was sorry, I'm getting an Amber Alert right now. Sorry.
Yeah, that was me. I get them all the time.
I'm getting one right now. Yeah, anyways, I was leaning on Will's shoulder, and I looked at him, and I said, Will, I need your help. He said, Collin, what are you doing? I said, I can't see, Will. He said, dude, get the hell off me. Go away. He literally just pushed me. I went and laid on the wall, and Coach Jackson, who was our strength coach at the time, he came and he said, Hartman, what are you doing? Get up and be a man. I was so embarrassed, but I blacked out, and I was just standing there. I was gassed. Everybody was like, what are you doing? Will just, pushed me. Like, get away from me. You're being a child. But I was like, Will, I can't see. Oh, I was a wimp.
Oh, so you were coached by Risley, so it doesn't surprise me if you were a wimp.
No. We had a similar story. We had Ray Tolbert, and Ray had 3 lungs. He was the only human being I ever known that was born with 3 lungs. And we would run the cross-country course for conditioning in the fall. And before season started, we would get up at 6 in the morning and have to go run the cross-country course, which is about a 3.5 mile loop through the golf course, basically. So you're running on grass. It's usually wet grass in the morning. It's up and down hills. It's not running on a track or running on concrete. And we'd all be just dying and struggling. And Ray would be sitting there on the last half mile. He'd be jogging it about 20, 30, 40 yards ahead of us. He'd be jogging backwards, laughing at us. And Ray's just like, come on, guys, let's do lap 2. And we're all of us, Woodson, Carter, me, Isaiah, Amy, but we were all we wanted to kill him. As we were dying trying to do this. And he's just jogging backwards, running, totally with his back to where he's going. And the managers are out there with him on golf carts giving him direction. And it was so conditioning was always a fun part. It's a good team building part of the whole process when you get into the conditioning part. But it really is. It's a really fun bonding time when you just you put a basketball down and you just try and do other things as a team. You get away from setting the picks, the setting the screens, the blocking out. You're not trying to bang each other on the boards or knock each other out in a drill, but you're just out there all working for a common cause. And we did a lot of that. But once the season started, we stopped conditioning for the most part. Conditioning was used pretty much from that point on for us as pretty much punishment. When we started practicing badly, then we conditioned. They said, if you aren't going to practice, we'll just get in shape. We'll just do that. And I remember the first day of practice for us was always everybody. It was back to the old Vaseline, and we did loose ball drills, take the charge drills. It was first day of practice was always the hardest practice of the year. There was no worry about anybody getting hurt. If you got hurt. That's the way it was. But you were going to leave it all on the floor in the first day of the year, set the tone for what it was going to be like for the rest of the season. And from there, gradually, over a very slow incremental point in time, we would start at the beginning of the year with 3.5, 3 hour and 45-minute practice. To the end of the year, we were going maybe an hour and a half practice is all we were doing. And it just kept dwindling down as games became more relevant. We got into the Big Ten. But I remember the first week of practice we were all ready to die. We were so sore we couldn't lift an arm. Yeah. But it was fun. It was a good pain. It's a good pain.
All right, so let's kind of transition here to, we talked about leadership last week, and Juwan Morgan came out and said that they were making the tournament without a doubt this year. So I'm going to give this question to both of you guys. We'll start off with Collin. Talk about Juwan's confidence in challenging the team, setting a bare minimum standard for the season. That has to be a great thing. That's something we haven't heard from an Indiana basketball player in a while, I don't think.
Right, and I think it's great. I saw Juwan last weekend when I went down there and hung out with some of the guys and saw him before the football game and everything. I love the confidence. At the end of the day, if you speak it into existence, that's a thing. I mean, I fully believe that's a thing, and you challenge yourself, you challenge the team, just because it's out there now. You know, people have expectations. You've said it. You have to live up to your words and live up to your actions, especially as a man and as a leader. And when you put it out there, you better live up to it. And I think that he's ready as a leader to challenge himself, challenge the team, and lead this team. I think that he also talked about himself growing as a leader, and I think that's huge. Having the confidence in yourself as not only a player but as a leader, as a character, and knowing that you are capable of what's being asked of you. Because everybody expects him to be the leader of this team. Everybody who's an IU basketball fan expects Juwan to be the leader of this team. I think it's that much better with him having the confidence in himself to fill that role and still produce at the same time is huge. So I think especially with social media, him throwing it out there, and him saying it wasn't even a question in his mind, it's awesome, just because it holds the team to a higher standards, and he has something to at least fight for, bare minimum this year, you know. So I think it's a very, very, very good thing for Juwan to come out and say that. And I think the next step for him is to bring players along, grab 2-3 guys, bring them in, get extra shots, or bring them in and watch extra film or whatever, and just have them bring a couple guys, and it just trickles down, and then you have a complete team. You have the 8 to 10 guys that you need, that are going to play every single night and contribute every single night. You're all on the same page. Everybody's working the same cause, and everything's rolling.
Now, Steve, I want to hear your opinion on that too, but also talk about the difference. We see the media now of all these post-game press conferences, pre-game press conferences before the season. It wasn't like that in your day, was it? From what I remember, I mean, and how much leeway did you have to talk to the media with Coach Knight?
Well, first off, I want to say this. I wholeheartedly agree with what Collin just said. I mean, that's the essence of the culture of Indiana basketball. You set realistic goals, and then you define those goals, and then you create a strategy to achieve those goals. And I think that what Juwan has done and what Collin spoke to just there was very eloquent, and very much is something that has not transitioned a bit from the 1976 team, the 74 team, to the 86 team, 87 team, to the current team, and all of Collin's teams. That culture exists in Indiana basketball, is that you don't over bravado yourself, but you state legitimate goals, and then you work your butt off to go and achieve. And I don't think that it's like they stated the goal and decided to go work toward those. I think they decided what their goals were during the time they were practicing all summer long. And just now they're defining to some mediocre degree what those goals are. A very simplistic degree. I shouldn't say mediocre, but a very simplistic degree. So I thought Collin's analogy was very eloquent and spot on. And that hasn't changed a bit. I heard an interesting thing today in listening to Archie Miller's press conference, where he said the key to Juwan Morgan is for Juwan Morgan's leadership to be toward the team and not toward himself. And for Juwan to really step up and make the leadership contributions he needs to on this basketball team, it needs to be toward focusing on making sure that the team achieves all of their goals before he achieves all of his individual goals. And if Juwan does that, and he said he thought Indiana would be fine, that Juwan was one of the best players in the country, certainly one of the top players in the Big Ten, but the only pitfall for Juwan would be if Juwan started working on individual goals above that. And to me, I signaled that and took that as kind of a thing that I think he's going to step up and try and bring somebody like a Romeo Langford online real quick to accept some leadership responsibility, much as Isaiah did or Yogi did, maybe not to the degree, or maybe to the degree. I don't know. We don't know where Romeo's going to play out. But that was a very poignant comment about what Juwan needs to do. But Collin's statements were really good. In terms of us too, we would sit down on media day and we would have about a 20-minute meeting with Coach. And this is the only thing Coach said to us for 4 straight years. And I wrote it down in my notebook that I took. We had notebooks when we played at Indiana. Knight made us keep a notebook that we had to have with us all the time. I have all my notebooks. They're actually a pretty fascinating read because they're a breakdown of every team that we played and a breakdown of every practice, every film session and everything. And writers have actually used those notebooks to write books off of them based on information that I had put down in my notebook. But, he looked at us, he said, fellas, let me tell you something about the media. Most of us learn to read and write in the first grade and go on to bigger and better things. And so whatever you say to them, take with a grain of salt because they're going to present it in a way they want to present it, and they're going to take anything you can and spin it in a way they want to spin it. So the less you say, the more power you have. And we got that same speech. I mean, it was verbatim. And, Collin, I'm sure you got some version of that speech as well because Indiana, you had great coaches in Indiana too. The same thing as walk softly and carry a big stick was kind of the verbiage and mentality there. But we never overstated, and I don't think Indiana's overstated. I think for Juwan to come out and say that Indiana's going to make the playoffs and possibly be a Sweet 16 team, I think it's a very realistic goal. It's an expectation for me. At this point in time, without having seen him play, it's not a goal for me. For me, as a former player who's seen 45 years of this, it's an expectation based on what I see as a level of talent this basketball team has. And what I think of Coach Miller as a coach. And what I think of what the groundwork that Coach Crean laid for this basketball team. I mean, I'm not going to discount the work that Coach Crean did to get this team to where it's at for Coach Miller to come in and to elevate it to the next level. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from Coach Crean's efforts. I mean, he never got to the plateau he wanted to get to, but he took us to different plateaus that we wouldn't have gotten to without Coach Crean. And don't ever forget that. He's an important cog in Indiana's revitalization and success. And I think Coach Miller is just going to defensively get us to the next level. He's going to get these players thinking collectively about common team goals versus individual goals. And it's an expectation for me for Indiana to make the tournament and to make it to the Sweet 16.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think when you compare it to last year when we started doing this show, we were just hoping that they would win more games than they would lose.
Exactly. Remember, Mike, we were talking, if they went to 500, we'd be happy.
Yeah. Because you can't expect
a
new coach. It's not about that. It's about when you have a coach that plays it in a different style than the coach before him, it's usually going to take
some
huge
time transition
to get your players. Yeah, it's the transition. I mean, we knew they had the players, but you don't know how the transition from one coaching style to another coaching style is going to take effect.
Well, you have to think of it like hardware versus software. You can't just download something in a few minutes and change it. I mean, you have to change out the whole hardware and the whole mindset that we had. And it was a learning curve. I mean, it's not an overnight thing. That was obvious. I mean, it took a whole season, and I mean, to be quite honest, hopefully it happens, from the start of this season. But at the end of the day, it might not. And that's why you have to give the team time to grow and to transition into it. Just because you have guys that are only 1 year into experience. Yes, they know the system and everything, but it's still shaking off what we've already been programmed to do, and completely transitioning and trying to bring the young guys along and teach them at the same time. So it's a whole process.
Yeah,
and Coach Miller addressed that today. And if I was in Indianapolis and I had media credentials, I'd be at every media opportunity I had to listen to Coach Miller, because he's a very smart basketball coach. And man, I did take the time to listen to his entire press conference today. So if I was going down there on Friday or Saturday, had media credentials, I'd be in that media room listening to what he had to say.
Are you throwing shots right now?
No, I'm throwing some shade out there that I'd be in there thinking of what I want to be smarter than the average IU basketball fan. But he spoke to that intently, that his expectations of this season are so far removed from what they were last year. Last year, he was hoping he could just get kids to stay on the team and to keep them playing together and to begin to understand what Indiana basketball was all about. He talked today that he's had these freshmen for 5 or 6 weeks there. He's had his team together, that he has valid expectations of this basketball team, and they're going to live to a higher standard. And they should. Exactly, Collin, they should. But they're going to live to a much higher standard than the team did last year. And you're going to see probably a lot more animation. He kind of alluded to that you're going to see more animation out of him this year that if you don't meet his expectations, you may find yourself fighting for playing
buried
time.
in the bench.
I think he has a bench and he has some depth that he can do that, and he's young enough that he can play a broad range of players in there, and he's got enough solid players that he can experiment with things up front. But I was incredibly impressed with his press conference today that he held this afternoon on Facebook.
Yeah,
and I certainly would be at his post-game press conference after March Madness. I would love to be there if I had credentials.
See, I'll try to give everybody the backstory. So Steve's mad because I'm debating on going to the press conference. I feel a little weird just because I was a player last year and blah, 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 blah.
Get out your box, Collin.
Just to appease the old grumpy old man.
The grumpy
well, maybe
you're not a player anymore.
If you didn't live in the out in beautiful L.A., you could come do all this stuff too.
Yeah,
I'd be there. I'd be sitting right next to the band. I'd be deaf by the time I got in the press conference. I'd be listening to what the man had to say because I think he's good. He's very good.
Well, you still got to hear what the man said because of Facebook.
Yeah, I did.
But all right,
Mike, what's your next question?
I don't have a next question. I think we're pretty much done for tonight. Steve has got all of his bitterness out, maybe, so he can sleep easy tonight. Plus,
love you, Steve.
He's in L.A., so it's almost 6 o'clock Eastern, or it's 6 o'clock on the West Coast.
Bedtime.
So I know when you get up there in age, you got to be going to bed about 6 or 7. But the problem I have is when he butt dials me at 2:15 in the morning Eastern time.
Steve gets his payback.
It's not necessarily a butt dial. That's an intelligent guided option on an opportunity to talk about something relevant.
I figured what it was is you tried to call me. You realized I was asleep. You hung up, and the next day when I called you back to see what you wanted, instead of admitting that you called me at after 2 o'clock in the morning, you just used a butt dial excuse.
Yeah, I just didn't want you to think that badly. Collin, what are your expectations of this team, really?
I think that we're going to be I think we'll finish top 3 in the Big Ten. I mean, I don't see any reason why. I see a Sweet 16 run if we peak at the right time. I feel like we have all the tools. I feel like we're very underrated, and I love it. I feel like people are going to kind of hone in on Juwan and Romeo for sure, and I think that other guys are going to step up and have big games. Obviously, Juwan and Romeo will get theirs, just out of raw talent and being very good and very smart. And I think people are going to underestimate guys like Devontae Green and even Deron Davis and stuff like that. We have more pieces than most people believe, and I'm excited to watch it, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, and the thing I like is, Steve, when you look at Duke, they're bringing in like an entirely new starting 5. So when Indiana goes to play them, Indiana's going to do it with some young studs like they've got. But you've also got, hopefully, senior leadership, and then a guy like Deron Davis, Zach McRoberts. So you have a mix there of veterans and young guys, which teams like Duke I don't think will have.
My point exactly. I don't think we're out of the mix for that very reason. There's a lot of other big teams that have lost a lot of great talent that are in the same boat that Indiana is. And I just what we need to find out is, starting probably with the March Madness opening night, but more in tune to the first couple of weeks of practice, how hungry Indiana is to establish themselves as a player, not a player, right up front. I think that's just an instillment that Archie's got to put into this team, that these guys, and I like what I'm hearing so far. I like the confidence, the quiet confidence. I think a lot falls on like Devontae Green's shoulders. For some reason, I really think Collin addressed it. I think he's the key to this whole thing, because I think we're going to get our expectations out of Morgan, and we're going to get our expectations out of Langford. Yeah, Romeo and Juwan. We're going to get it out of them. But I think Green and Durham, do you not agree with me and think that those are the guys that are going to make or break us if they can get their level of play to a consistent level throughout the course of the season. They don't have to be great. They just have to be consistent. So we can count on the same thing from them every given night.
Well, I agree with those two, and even I'd go a step further with Deron Davis. I mean, having him back, having him have a year under his belt, and actually having a 6'10" guy with some meat, and not me and Juwan down there playing the 5, and having a guy down there that can bang with the big guys across the country. I think that adds a whole nother level of, I don't even know. I mean, another arsenal to our army, I guess you could say, whatever you want to say. It just adds that much more to our team, that much more depth, and allows Juwan to play the true 4 and, things of that nature. So I think it's all of those guys can just put a complete team together and build depth to the team. I think Deron is another, just like Devontae and Al Durham, it's just having big seasons and taking huge steps forward as players.
Yeah, I think you know what you're going to get out of McRoberts. But I have one question. You talked about having a big guy inside. You said the word me. Were you talking about you? Because I never saw you step inside the 3-point line once the entire
On defense,
season.
I had to all season.
On defense, Steve.
On defense, I had to guard the paint every time.
Okay.
I had to use my brain. It's not a whole lot, but it's there a little bit.
Yeah.
I had to say it before you said something because I knew it was coming if I did.
I don't know. I just want to know. What I want to know is this. I want to see these notes you took at practices to see if autocorrect is really your problem or if you can't spell.
Definitely.
No. This was all done with a 3-ring binder. And I'm not kidding. Knight made us, every year he gave us a notebook and he handed it to us on the first day of practice. And we kept that notebook. It went on the court with us. They all sat on one of the end zone goals, basketball goals. And he would just be in the middle of practice. He would brought out notebooks. And everybody would run and get their notebooks. And we would start writing down his words, his quotes. I guarantee you a lot of the books that are written on Knight by former players are written out of these notebooks. And, I mean, I have the scouting reports on virtually every player for 3 years. We didn't do it my freshman year, but starting my sophomore year, we carried these notebooks around. I'll never forget the time, and here's your funny story of the year. We lost to Purdue at Mackey Arena, and we got on the bus, and we had not played well. It was a game we should have won. I can't remember if it was 80 or it may have been 81. It's one of the years that we were playing well. And we got on the bus, and Knight got up, and we got just outside of Bloomington. We were driving from Bloomington to Champaign-Urbana, which was probably about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive. I don't know, Collin, did you drive or fly to on that trip?
We drive to Illinois.
Yeah, we drove that too. And we're like an hour out, and he's like, "All right, everybody, notebooks out." Nobody had their notebooks. They were all packed away in the team bags, which were under the bus. He stopped the bus on I-74. He threw out every team bag, and he made every player dig for their notebooks.
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, and he was going through the notebook. If you didn't get your notebook fast, he was throwing your stuff on I-74 to help you find your notebook. And then from then on into Champaign-Urbana was just hell. It didn't matter. You couldn't write down what he was saying from that point on. The fact that we didn't care enough, and he had a completely different starting lineup. I think I had started like 4 games in a row. I don't think I played in that game because I was one of the ones who had my notebook buried way deep down in the bottom of my notebook underneath my tennis shoes, and I think he helped me get mine out. And I don't think that I even saw the light of day off the bench at Assembly Hall in Champaign-Urbana that night when we played. But we ended up winning the game. It was a game, but yeah, the notebook thing was a big thing, and they became very cherished. And I do have mine, and it's just wisdom. You go back and read through them, you would not understand it unless you lived through it, because it's a lot of talk about setting up what Michigan State's offense is all about, what their defense is about, the key tendencies of Johnson, Kelser, Vincent, Berkovich, Williams, Kellogg, Jim Smith, Carter Scott, Kelvin Ramsey. We had the tendencies of all those guys, and we took notes. Films, always, practice, almost all the time. You never went out without that notebook, and I think it was a good thing, because it really taught you how to take notes in class too. Basically, you were in class, but just to treasure those now, and I'll will those probably to the Hall of Fame at some point when I get old enough I want to part with them and let them see them. But they're pretty much of a treasure to have and keep at this point in time.
All right, it's good to know that you didn't.
Yeah, they're really cool
in high school. But Collin, any final words?
Yeah, there is one more person I want to we don't have to talk about it a whole lot, but a person that to watch out for is Race Thompson. He redshirted last year, and just watching him work and practicing against him day in and day out last year, because he redshirted, he always played on the practice squad, and was one of the key guys that role played for us as the other team's best player, stuff like that. The dude's work ethic is great. I think that I haven't been around a whole lot this summer to watch them work out and stuff, but I know how hard he works and how hard the team and the staff pushes him. So I'm excited to see him perform during Hoosier Hysteria as well.
All right, Steve.
Collin, that's a great thing that if I had media credentials, I would probably go into the locker room or the press room after Hoosier Hysteria, and I might just sit there and ask Coach Miller about Race Thompson. Say, how do you see him fitting in? And give your buddy a plug. Let him talk about that guy in the media. You can do some good in that room too. You're going to garner a lot of respect in there when you walk in there. You're going to be looked upon. People are going to ask you a lot of questions about what's going on. But that's a tremendous opportunity to help a buddy that you like and to go and put his name out there in front of other people and to get Coach Miller thinking about, this kid's a good player, and maybe I need to be thinking about using him some more. All the more reason you should take seriously your responsibility as a media journalist now and not a player.
Fair enough. There's validity to that statement. I'll give you that one.
All right.
Point Steve.
I want to. First point he scored in a year and a half that I've known him. Similar to his basketball career at IU too. I think he averaged 1 point a game.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Number one, I want to give a shout out to Hoosier Sports Nation, who put our podcast or let us put our podcast up last week. I want to thank them. We actually got a fair amount of listeners from them. And remember, if you want to ask questions for next Wednesday night show to Steve or Collin, you can go to Indiana Basketball Weekly with Collin Hartman and Steve Risley. That is on Facebook. You can find the Grueling Truth page. We'll approve you to get on there. You can send comments to Steve. You can send comments to Collin. Ask questions for the show next week, because we want as much interaction as we can get from the fans. Right, Steve?
Yes. 100%.
Steve, right? Steve,
yeah,
right?
Steve. I said Steve.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Yeah,
well, the only way we're going to make this show fun for everybody is if people step up to the plate and ask questions, because we can ramble forever. I mean, Collin and I both have stories and history to tell, and they're all fun. There's no doubt about it. But what's really important is to be able to take an opportunity to address the history of basically 45 years of IU basketball, and to really look at the transition that's occurred from the beginning of the Knight era or the peak of it, and then transition into what's now the Archie Miller era. Not many other websites or Twitter pages or anything like that can produce that. And I think that Collin has some tremendous insight as a young player. I think he's very well poised. I think he communicates well with people, and he really has a different perspective. And the game is different than it was when I played. But in the end, when you break it all down, the perspective may be different, but I think the methodology is still the same. And that's the culture of Indiana basketball. It's still there. It's the culture of Indiana basketball. It's to represent your university, represent your community, represent yourself, represent your family, and win in an ethical manner, and do it in a way that makes all Hoosiers proud to be behind this basketball program. And I think we're going to get there this year. Not that we haven't been there. I think we're going to get there this year with Indiana winning a significant amount of basketball games this year and being relevant this year.
Yep.
And let me remind you, you can hear us every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on thegruelingtruth.net. You can also hear us on Spreaker, where you can also we also have a chat where you can ask questions on Spreaker also, and we can get those to the guys also. So next Wednesday night,
we do have a Twitter page, Grueling Truth Indiana Hoops.
There you go.
Grueling Truth Indiana Hoops. It's at Grueling Hoops. You can just Twitter at Grueling Hoops. Collin and I will both check questions, and we will highlight your questions. And we love the questions because it makes it more fun. It jogs our mind to tell funny stories. And trust me, I've got so many funny stories that I just can't remember them all. I'm not sure Collin's the same way. And I say funny, I don't mean we're not trying to embarrass anybody or downplay anybody. There are always heartwarming things that happen inside the locker room that anybody who's not part of what Collin and I have had the absolute privilege to be a part of, they can't tell you those stories. And they can't relate it to you, and they can't give you an insight and perspective into the coaches and the support personnel of Indiana basketball, be it ADs, be it academic advisors, be it trainers, be it anybody, that Collin and I had the ability to do. And we can bring a different perspective. And everybody out there is listening to this should really take advantage of that and have some fun with it. This is going to be a fun year for Indiana basketball.
All right.
And Collin, I'm grateful that you're on board. Collin, you're doing a great job. I'm really appreciative you come on board with us, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
All right,
forward
guys.
to it.
Remember, every Wednesday night at 8 with Collin and Steve. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, at Grueling Hoops on Twitter. On Facebook, remember, Indiana Basketball Weekly with Collin and Steve. Make sure you check that out. You can hear all of our shows on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Collin Hartman, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.